Can people in the back hear clearly? Yes? Okay, great, thank you. So I'm going to read all unpublished work tonight, many pieces which I've never shared with others before. And I wanted to actually start my reading with a piece that I thought could kind of bridge some of the themes that Jasno was reading about tonight. Last year I had a significant death and loss in my life as well. My meditation teacher, actually from Europa, who I'd known for 20 years, who had been very important to me, and so it's also been a year of a lot of evolution and change for me, not just in terms of, like, I think, being a human being, but actually in the evolution of the way in which I'm writing and working and practicing as an artist. So this is the news of your death. The news of your death reaches me the morning a building crew across the street pushes back their clamor for an extra hour. Rested, I rise to meet another day, stunned to see your face flooding the internet. Morning messages bearing the story of what is known. You ended your life. 3 days after your body blackened in a car, you set ablaze by the rifle range. You were named in the local daily. I lost no sleep at the gossip of the Sakyong's sudden departure, like father, like son, the harm that cannot be undone. What I still struggle to fathom, the meaning in your last act of resistance, the vows we take as teachings, to do no harm, to do no harm, to do no harm. So I had an extraordinary experience last year to travel to Bhutan, the kingdom of the Thunder Dragon, as part of the work that I do with a company called Atlas Obscura. And for me, going to Bhutan, which is the only continuous Buddhist kingdom in the world, was a really extraordinary experience to kind of have a kind of spiritual homecoming. So these are a series of poems that I wrote about some of the experiences that I had in Bhutan and some of the awakenings that sort of came through. Where you go beyond the palace walls of the mind. See the half-clothed child at the roadside stand. Hear the howl of street dogs that keep you awake at night. To be born, these words rising in me, I say, for all living beings. The gift. In another land, I ask permission to take from the fig tree. My guide says the Bhutanese believe plucking a leaf is akin to cutting the throats of 1,000 monks. Here, he says, let me do that for you. How is this one? So one of the big things that people do when they go to Bhutan is they ascend to a very old monastery and hermitage in the mountains. It's above 10,000 feet elevation, a place called Taksong, or Tiger's Nest. It's a very sacred place where a saint named Padmasambhava from India brought Buddhism to Bhutan to basically take root and flower. So it's a very sacred site. And most people sort of embark on that journey towards the end of their time in Bhutan, as they've kind of had the opportunity to take in many experiences and then are properly altitude acclimated to make the ascent. So this is a series of short poems, mostly haiku style, about that experience. On the road to Tiger's Nest, mistaking bird calls from Chinese tourists as cries of pain. Ascending the dusty path, my companion, the sharpened walking stick. Advised to arm myself with a rock to guard against wild dogs, I discard the stone in a ditch. The duct tape prayer book, property of the studious monk. Animal hide glue binds painted canvas to a temple wall. Good merit for all sentient beings. Rice grains in the window seat at the temple, remnants of offerings. So one of my guides during my time in Bhutan happened to be the strongest man in the country. So every year for the last 5 years, the Bhutanese have held this competition that is actually quite older, traditionally, goes back probably a couple of hundred years. It's a very agricultural agrarian society, and so the role of strongmen in the culture is incredibly important. And so in the last 5 years, they've kind of institutionalized it in a sort of almost like Scottish Games sort of way. And so it's a televised competition in the capital in a major sports stadium where you have strongmen dressed in traditional go, which are kind of these like wrapped outfits that are very traditional. And they are dragging like giant tractor tires across the field. They're chopping wood, and it's quite fantastic and incredible. And so one of my guys happened to have won this competition. He is the reigning champion, the strongest man in Bhutan, and claimed that title. And what I found really extraordinary about him is that while we were in his care, he was very careful and compassionate about making sure that we all stayed safe, which meant on many occasions he had to take our guests to the emergency room. And in one really fantastic experience, we were with one of our guests who was a Vietnam veteran, and he was elderly and was also recuperating from a very serious injury that had taken a couple of years to kind of recover from. And when we made it, after we made it to the top of this climb to this temple, he was too fatigued to make it down on his own. So our strongman, Sonam Tenzin, picked up this 235-pound man on his back and carried him down the dirt path. And it was simply incredible and just a real testament to his care for others. So this is a poem for the strongest man in Bhutan. Chongsa Zongkag Nyagawe, which means the strongest man in Bhutan, for Sonam Tenzin. The strong man from Chongsa turns his face away when the medical aide plunges the needle into my upper arm. The emergency room bathed in morning light where he brings me when I slip and lose my footing near the irrigation ditch. On the path to Chimilakang, a landscape painted in flying phalluses. In the grainy streaming video, I watch his tiny figure compete in log dragging, wood chopping, heaving giant tires across a field to secure an honor. The veteran of war on the tour, our frailest traveler, falters, hobbled years ago by a yacht injury, lucky to walk again. He maneuvers with hiking poles, and when he tires, the strong man carries the 235-pound grown-up down the dirt path, atop his back, to the edge of Sapsika village. When I turn back to look, he's holding the old man's hand, tending to those who can't move as quickly, walking by my own side on the ascent to Tiger's Nest. He shares a dream of nearly finishing engineering school, and in his 4th year to be expelled for an error made in youth. I regard the tattoo on his left arm that brings him regret, concealed beneath the sleeve of his tartan go, the pain of old mistakes, to feel one's worth, the might to strain forward into the emerging. So I didn't realize it until recently, but I have a sort of theme in my work of, I think, turning towards the stars or sort of celestial bodies to sometimes find inspiration and write poetry. I'm an artist in residence right now for the Pacific Science Center, where I'm working with an astrophysicist who takes patterns of starlight and basically takes that data and makes sonifications, so sort of sound patterns. And so I've been learning a lot about his work and the ways in which these patterns can reveal information about planets that haven't yet truly been explored. And so I wanted to read a couple of poems about these sort of celestial experiences, and then to share a very long poem called Enso, which is the sort of capstone of a book that I'm working on. And Enso is about the total eclipse of 2017, standing in totality. Now this is Starshine. In the search for signs of intelligent life, we are blinded by want of a twin. We measure flux gunned through a telescope, seeking the sun that comes right at us, to shine its light upon a distant world still unborn. But of the mind bathed in starlight, her face turning towards you in resonance, our positions sculpted by gravity in a fixed order, yet unnamed, the outlier body transiting. Transit of Venus. And a couple of terms in this poem. I wrote it when I lived in Arkansas, which is sometimes referred to as the natural state. And there's a Sanskrit word here called darshan, and a darshan is a viewing of a god or a deity. Transit of Venus. In line to view the planet second closest to the sun, my partner gabs with a chemistry professor on ways to improve his sake brew, while I evade eye contact with the town gossip to limit the risk of lost vision caused by staring straight into the sun. We visit the school observatory to learn something more about the Earth's sister orb. Small dark disk traveling over the face of the sun reveals the distance from Earth to star, secrets of atmosphere and other heavenly transits. In our own position of departing the natural state, I turn for confirmation from the planets that were there at birth. Here, in the burning traversion of celestial bodies, another kind of darshan. This migration human beings won't bear witness to for another century. So this piece, and so, is a long poem written in many different sections, written over a long period of time. And I guess I have a couple things I want to say about it. It's a new piece, it's a very personal piece, and I'm getting used to reading and talking about it because I will have to when my book comes out. So I think I will say that the poem is reflective of a kind of an evolution of a life's purpose for me. It's about the growth of my poetic sensibility, and in some ways, it might sound strange, but so I view the practice in writing of poetry as a kind of gift or offering to the world. And so this poem, and so in some ways, is the first gift or first poem that I ever wrote for myself. So in this way, it has a little bit of a different tone. There are a couple of images that I just want to help to ground a little bit. So a hanya is a Japanese folkloric figure that is often depicted as a crone or a hag, but is often mistaken for a demoness. So it's a much more complex, sophisticated symbol, but often is sort of attributed with sort of fear or sort of demonic powers. The Daruma doll also appears in this. Daruma is a Japanese doll. You might have seen it before. It's a small red doll that people will often exchange or give for birthdays or holidays and significant sort of turning points in one's life. Daruma is a doll that is symbolic of Bodhidharma, who was an Indian saint who meditated for many years and is said to have torn off his eyelids. And so he's often in trying to get into sort of a meditative state. So he's often depicted in these dolls as blind, basically. So people basically draw on the eyes and kind of set an aspiration or a wish. And then there are just a couple of artists that are mentioned in this poem. Yayoi Kusama, who had a retrospective exhibition in Seattle last year, and a British artist named Lee Jeffries, who also exhibited his work last year by projecting the images that he made on buildings in Pioneer Square. So this is the poem Enso, and it begins in a tattoo parlor. Enso. An artist inserts ink under skin, shows you how to see artistry in his craft, what's discerned from studying the claws of a dragon, finely drawn lines in the form of waves, appearance of lotus and cherry blossom in one flowering gesture, asynchronous. When she sees eye to eye with the mask of Hanya hanging on a wall, she sees something she hasn't noticed before, an expression of sorrow, reliving one of the few times her mother reasoned with her. What her parents told her in youth to make her comply. Take down the poster of the black-haired singer attired in oversized tee, printed with that same visage, a sad air gone by the time her grandfather arrived for an extended stay. She adapted to his fear of Japanese ghosts, didn't ask about the odd look in Hanya's eyes, a guise of wisdom, what marked the image as the opposite of demonic, something to be feared, her protective potential. In a stranger's office, you detail the pupil of the Dharma. Black ink absorbing into the papier-mâché doll, dilates to fill the void. half-sighted, half-blind. She trembles in the shadow of the solar eclipse, the feel of totality. The temperature on her skin goes cold by 17 degrees, the valley gone silent, an absence of birdsong around her. Fearing she will go blind if she takes away the protective sheath, she watches sun blotted out, the soldered seam of light, crackling with the energy of electricity, her hair standing on end. A turning of the wheel. There is no separation between her and obliteration when she watches a juvenile squid, Logolo opalescens, expire in the weathered palm of the retired smoke jumper. A marine biologist presiding over the death scraped a plastic spoon across its soft body, activating a rainbow of chromatophores, ink flooding his grip. An animal died in the making of this poem. Cephalopods thrown into a plastic cooler, a clear Ziploc bag of bodies drawn to the sound in the hope of sex. The betrayal of a promise to do no harm. Tasting my unfaithfulness while wanting to believe the biologist who said all the right things. When asked if the animal sensed pain, it has a highly developed nervous system. The group of adventurers peppered him with questions dissecting the anatomy of the animal, holding the creature's gaze in its final death throes, unprepared for the largeness of its eyes. The sight in the distance, a band of anglers bouncing fish poles on the pier, pulling their catch into 10-pound buckets in the slow-motion spray of light, gleaming drips cascading down, a canvas of night, my eyes dazzled by tears, the damp shadow of a squid smeared across a sheet of Strathmore paper. The artist admits herself to the hospital ward where she contemplates infinity for 40 years. In the room of the aftermath of the obliteration of eternity, your heart stops beating when the lights go black. A moment before a knock on the door brings you back to now. Eyes gradually attuned to 100 glimmering lamps, ascending flight of fire lanterns at New Year's. The day you leave that life behind, art walk revelers drunkenly pull political prints beneath the warm lights of a studio practice. A screen inked and re-inked with an image of a clenched fist. After 20 years, opening the doors of creativity for others, you choose another life. Walk into the icy night where you are confronted steps away from your former firm, with face after face of homeless men, women, and children, projected on the side of an edifice at one of the city's poorest intersections. Portraits by a British photographer. Neighbors from the Union Gospel Mission, tower 3 stories tall, made to look at what you have feared, renouncing the pay that could put your family on the street, forsaking money paid to you for what you gave up in yourself to be part of that world, remembering the margins to which you always belonged, an ornamental carp leaping into waterfall. On Thanksgiving Day, she seeks out salmon spawning at Carkeek Park. Moving upstream, she finds their silver bodies at rest in the shallows. In another part of the creek, a fish that didn't make it, caught in a tangle of branches, the plunk of water splashing as another fights its way forward. Thank you. A child sees the ceaseless cycle as an augury of death. No, she says, they are completing their lives. You take the eclipse inside yourself. The sheet of colored dots decorate a white room, effacing every shed of negative space, the colors, the spectrum of light, before an emotion emerges, the place of possibility where lotus and sakura are born to bloom together, upheld by your own sense of boundlessness. In the contours of hand-drawn waves, you start to pull your own story. And I'm going to finish with one last piece.
Wow.
Thank you. This last piece is called The Uncarved Block. The uncarved block. The thing we think we want, perfection. To honor a fidelity to origin, when all was ever in a state of emerging. The soft bones forming a newborn skull, the fontanelle of the David's marble crown left undone. imperfection, a wholeness, complete unto itself. Thank you.